The situation at the border is one of the toughest challenges we face. It is complicated, changing, and involves vulnerable people at a time of a global pandemic.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas just wrapped up his latest trip to South Texas as the Republicans are pushing for his impeachment. The secretary announcing there were over 212,000 migrant encounters in July. That's a 13% increase from June and the highest number in more than 20 years.
Here to react is Fox Nation host Lara Logan. Okay, Laura, so they're pushing for Mayorkas to be impeached. Now they're leaving it to the local leaders to kind of clean up what's going on down there. I want to pull this up, and then I want your reaction on the other side of this. The local Texas leaders plead to DHS Secretary Mayorkas, stop releasing migrant families due to the surge in COVID-19, more resources for Border Patrol, and then reopen land ports to non-essential tourists to stimulate trade. You have been to the border. You have seen it. What is your take on this?
Well, this is a very serious situation, and perhaps the most serious part of all is that the Biden administration has been acting from day one as if this is not happening. And once again, you heard Secretary Mayorkas come to the border and talk about the people who are struggling and the people, you know, who are in a bad situation having to travel at this time. What he doesn't talk about, what no one in the Biden administration actually talks about, is the national security threat to this country. The Biden administration, like the previous one, knows that the Mexican cartels today are the most violent criminal organizations on earth that operate all over the world. Sinaloa, 54 countries, CJNG, you know, more than 40 countries. And one of the statistics that is just through the roof is the amount of fentanyl seizures at the border, which is the deadliest street drug in the history of this country and also every country in the world. And, you know, what we know for certain is that the Biden administration is not addressing the national security threat. They've taken no action to address it. They don't even acknowledge it. They don't explain it to the American people. And so the real question here that is not being asked of the Biden administration is why they are not concerned about national security, why they're not doing anything to mitigate the threat, and why their focus all the time is only on defining the border in humanitarian terms, when everybody knows that when you have an open border policy the way they have, that you're letting across both the innocent people seeking a better life, and you're also enabling the cartels, the human traffickers who move them, who are the #1 beneficiaries of this policy. And you know who it isn't when you talk to the ranchers, when you talk to the people along the border, it isn't the American citizens who are directly affected or the American citizens across the country who are indirectly affected.
Yeah, Lara, you bring up such a good point about the drugs. What was it, 2.8 tons of methamphetamine and fentanyl were just seized at the border. And those drugs, they're not staying in Texas. They are going to every single state here in the United States.
Yes, and overdose deaths are through the roof. You know, I mean, it's just so ironic because we all remember when, you know, constant sort of, you know, drumbeat of coverage over the opioid crisis. Isn't it so terrible? Look at all these Americans dying in the tens of thousands. Well, overdose deaths this year already exceed the last fiscal year. And the last fiscal year was a record high for this country. And when you break it down, the number of Americans who are dying every day is shocking. Not only that, it's the nature of who is dying that has changed, which is really the part that we should be talking about. Because this isn't about, you know, drug addicts on the streets of Baltimore or something like that. This is about 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old girls and boys who think they're taking a Xanax or they think they're taking an Adderall to study. And what they're taking is a fake pill, a counterfeit pill that is made with the help of the Chinese through a strategic partnership between the Chinese and the Mexican cartels. And they're using that to undermine this country from within, to kill innocent Americans. You know what one man from DEA said to me, one very senior leader said to me, I have DEA agents who were trained to fight the cartels. They're trained to go into battle. And what they're doing is they're in post-traumatic shock.
Wow.
Because day after day after day, they're going into the bedroom of young children who are not addicts, many of whom, you know, don't even take a lot of drugs and don't even use recreational drugs. And they're dying in record numbers, and we are silent. We do nothing for the families of these victims.
So true. Laura, I want to get to this really quickly. So illegal immigrants are being sent to major Texas cities without COVID tests. Now, Americans feel that they are being put last with all the restrictions that we have being put on us, but yet these hospitals are overloaded. What is your take on this?
Well, Americans are being put last. And what's ironic here, and not just ironic, reprehensible, is at the very same time that the Biden administration is doubling down on masks and the Delta variant and, you know, saying that accusing people who are not vaccinated of being killers, at the very same moment, they are just letting this flood of migrants across the border. And don't forget, the numbers you have, they don't include all the people who just got away.
That's
the tens of thousands pouring across the border.
So the number that
tested.
we think is high, it's even higher than that. Laura, you've done such a great job at the border.
Much higher.
Thank you so much for covering it. We appreciate you joining us.